Now we finally move on to the main character of this collab, Natsu. He's a free character that anyone can obtain, but is he good? Is he terrible? In this video, you'll find out and everything else you need to know about him, especially how to build him. What his talent does, attack and defense increases, which is doubled against dragons. After starting the battle or when an ally is forced into battle, he gains a stack of flames of emotion that increases his damage that stacks 6 times and lasts 6 turns. If he has 3 stacks, then he recovers HP 30% of damage dealt. So it is very easy to stack them up, but that does mean that he wants to be in kind of a longer fights in order to maintain them, because not only is it for the healing, it connects to his other skills like his 1C, for example, for the skill cooldown, and then you also have the 2C here for the act again. Despite it lasting a very long time, you still want to be in those longer fights. But we will go more deeper into that topic later on. With the class mastery stones, I do recommend having HP attack and defense for the first 2, and then the last 2 could be HP attack and skill. For the arena stones, I don't really recommend Natsu in PvP, but however, if you still want something on him, then I would suggest maybe having something like an offensive set, or put on something that you guys see me have. HP attack, defense, skill, and crit damage, but you can probably replace skill with like a crit down if you feel like it. His best soldiers include SP, only SP Dragon Trooper, because you get mobility and damage, but that does require you to move a certain amount of blocks, which is stacked up to 3 blocks at max. So I only really recommend these if you do have them in SP. However, in base form they are still plentiful good. They just only become really better in their SP form. You got the Mechanical Dragon Knights. They aren't too hard on the restriction. They got like attack and defense by 25%, and when being melee attack, they take less physical damage. Pretty good. Although I will say that the Stancy Mercenary are going to be like one of his best soldiers, because you do got a general attack and defense minus defense boost in battle, but after taking action, they do recover 20% of their HP, which is doubled when no allies are within 1 block. Pretty amazing stuff for self-sustainability. Then you have the Gallant Duelists. The thing about them is that they do have crit boost. If you really want to try that, especially if you have a crit build on them, then that is going to be quite strong. They also do have physical damage res like the Stancy, but it's only a 60% chance for that to happen. But what you're mainly looking at for these guys is just damage, especially crit damage. His best weapon of choice includes stuff like Crystal Stinger for crit and defense ignore. Just make sure that his skill is quite high, and this is going to be really needed if you are going for a crit build on him. If you don't have that one and you still want to try a crit build on him, then I do recommend having the Silver Swift Blade. More crits if you move up to 3 blocks. You have Bone Crusher to lower defense, Seeding Skill for skill damage whenever you act again, Mimir for sustain, and they do have damage as well as long as you're killing stuff, Ragnarok for fixed damage, so that can break certain HP conditions. Then your second best options, if you don't have the one on the top, is Throne Guardian for tons of attack and some HP, Peacemaker that disables passive skills. Then I would say that your last best of choice would be the Sealed Garden for the huge attack and some defense in there. But let's say you don't have that, then you can use Broken Star, which is the same thing as Sealed Garden but little less attack. Then you have Dragon Slayer, which is 8% attack and HP. But I do recommend having Sealed Guardian the most compared to the Broken Star and Dragon Slayer Gram, since it gives you way more attack. His best armor will be Last Rites, a top tier choice, since damage taken is reduced by 40% if you are healthy. Defend armor to have a 30% chance to lower damage taken in battle. Chainmail to dispel a buff when being attacked, so it can be disruptive. Timer is a really good one to take less damage from magic when in mixed forces. Since he's dragon, that is pretty much a guaranteed. Daniel's robe can be fine as well. 30% chance to dispel and apply a debuff. Then you'd want Preserve, Bloodline, and Aeolus if you don't have any of the ones on the top. Then finally, your last best bet would be Gifts of Death to lower damage taken based on movement, and Lizard Skin for a debuff when attacked, which is a 30% chance. but I do strongly recommend having either one of the top. His best helmet would be the ones to give him damage, so the Star Crown is pretty much his go-to. But the only problem with this is that he needs a healer to grant those buffs. It does offer the better buffs, however, if you don't like that, then Seer is a really good choice. As long as you have an attack on a turn, he gets skill damage, and he does have an act again skill to do that. Then the Owl, which you do need to be 2 blocks away from the enemy to obtain such buff, but it's going to be a little bit lower compared to the other two. Another thing too is Charon. You have a 50% chance to apply damage taken increase as a debuff, which is way more unique compared to the Vampire Mask. You can also use this one as well for defense reduction. But lowering defense is quite more common compared to damage taken increase. So I prefer having Charon over that one. I highly recommend either of these, but if you don't have any of those, then more options I can give you is Tenyos for random buff, Glory for some healing, and a Revive for fixed damage, Flower for more heals if below half HP, then you have Aeneas for raw stats, HP and defense, then Wing of Twilight for more magic defense. For the accessory, I recommend having tons of attack, so the Edge of Memories is 100% the best choice because of the skill cooldown. His skills do have a high cooldown, so it's quite neat, plus it can make a difference due to his 3C. It is mainly for his 3C. If you don't have that, then either Judge, Slayers of Prisoners for kill power. More options include stuff like Blood Nail for silence immunity, Shin Guard for the defense, and if you are going for a crit build, then I recommend having Insidious Pendant for 5% more crit rate. As for enchants, Breeze for mobility, Full Moon for the stats up, Clock for his 3C so that he can spam the terrain for the thing that it provides. More on that in a little bit. Then I would include Blazing Sun if you have a crit build. The enchant stats that you want to go for is tons of attack on the weapon. If you like attack and HP, then that's fine, but I do highly recommend that on the armor and helmet. Then accessory would be attack and crit. If you like having just HP and attack, then that's also really fine. However, for the crit build, you want that crit. Then I would say defense for the third substats if you are a perfectionist on at least the weapon, armor, and helmet. The accessory will be HP, attack, and crit. But I don't really recommend going for a third substat. That is really hard to pull off, so it's going to be costing you a lot. Alright, so now that you guys have an idea on how to build your Natsu, now let's walk through his first awakening stage. Alright, so here we are. So we're going to be up against Ymir, Nornrin, and then Mew. So these are going to be the skills that I'm going to be rocking with, but the 1C is going to be his unique one. However, if you do have Ragnarok on him, then you are able to make good use of Crush, since fixed damage, meaning he's always going to be having more HP than the enemy. So even though I do have the 1C, I'm barely going to make good use of it because for the 2C, I do have Air Slash, which we can attack quite safely on at least the first 2 enemies. Then the other 2C, I do really recommend having this one, his unique one, because it will give him more damage buffs. Then his best soldiers are going to be the ones that I said before, Dragon Troopers, mobility, and damage as long as you're moving up to 3 blocks. Mechanical Dragon Knight, which is going to be really good here. You take less physical damage from at least the first 2 enemies, which is what you're going to want to look for. Griffin Knight can be fine as well, just damage. Then you can use Gallant Duelist for the crit stuff, and then Sansi, which is going to be more of a sustain, plus they are quite strong on their own. So for this one, we are going to be using the Sansi Mercenaries. So for this one, it is quite absurd that you start off against Ymir, but luckily he doesn't have his act again skill, so we can take our time here. So let's start on the danger zone, and what we're going to do is go to the defensive terrain. We're going to make good use of it for the extra 30% defense, which is going to help us survive. So right here is perfect position so that we can transform for the extra damage. So let's go ahead and do that. So we do have 3 stacks already, so that's 50% damage increase. You have 35% damage increase right here on top of having just a ton of attack. So we should get rid of him right here. If you couldn't do the same that I did, then hopefully you are able to survive. You are on the defensive terrain, so you have a strong likelihood of doing so. Okay, so I found what we can do. It's gonna be quite a wall, but what we're gonna do is move up here. Northern will push us away, but we're still gonna be fine where we are. Our end mode is still gonna last just barely enough for what we're gonna do here. So Northern is only able to move right here. That's as far as she's gonna go, but she doesn't get the defense boost, and she's not nowhere near her water. She's not gonna be on a water terrain for the extra defense. However, we can move away from her by standing like right here. So we're gonna stand right here so that we don't get hit from her AoE. And then when we move closer to her, we'll be on the defense terrain. So if we look at Norn right now, no defense right there on top and no defense boost from her buff. So right here, we can attack while being on the defensive terrain. However, if you can't kill Norn, then that means she will move up and she will be on the defense terrain. But that's if she is using her single target attack. That's when she does it or when she acts again. What that also means, at the end of this turn, Natsu loses his end mode, so no extra damage. So just gotta hope that you are able to finish her off right here and there. And if you can't, then hopefully you are able to improvise. So yeah, we got rid of Nonorin, and then we are able to at the end since we do got the extra stacks. But unfortunately, we are gonna lose end mode. However, it should come back up pretty soon. And then with Mew, no problem at all. She is gonna be quite slow. You can reach her. So let's go ahead and just go all out on her and finish her off. So getting rid of Emir is probably going to be like the only thing that you really need to in order to just get that one buff to get rid of Nonorin. If Nonorin was still tricky to take out, then I would recommend doing the strat that I did. It can be a bit rough if you aren't able to one-shot her like I did. However, you should have been able to do enough to make her really low so that she isn't too much of a threat whenever she does attack you. Hopefully that's the case for some of you guys who are kind of struggling. So yeah, those two are going to be quite tricky. And then Mew is no problem at all. You can easily one-shot her. So yeah, hopefully this strategy helped you guys out. Alright, so now we can take a look at his 3C. Something that I told you guys that was really important kind of because of the passive right here. When within his Fire Dragon King's domain, damage taken is reduced and his skill range is increased by 1. This thing is a single target skill. If he has at least 4 stacks of flame, then he attacks before the enemy. In end mode, after battle, the terrain within 2 blocks of the target gains that special terrain, Fire Dragon King's domain, which only lasts 2 turns. So when the enemy is on it, they take fixed damage and take increased damage from Natsu. That stacks 2 times, last 2 turns. So yeah, this is the only way to apply the terrain, sadly enough. So he has to approach in order for the extra range, which I feel like he should have at least gotten like another skill, like another maybe AoE to at least apply it, like at least when he's in his end mode to apply it. Because if you just have one way to apply these terrain, especially if it's a single target, then it is going to be really rough. It just feels weird at that point. So yeah, for the second awakening stage, this is going to be one of those rare moments where I do show it off. Because unlike the other two, this one does put you in a weird situation where some of the characters don't give you a bigger advantage. So let's go ahead and check it out. So here we are. We do have Sissy White, Mew, and then Lucy. With Natsu's skills, I did replace the 1C for Sword Soul. The thing about Natsu is that I'm just hoping for him to at least get 1 kill in if I can. And then his soldiers, I'm not going to change it since I feel like the Sansi might be more common for a lot of people. So we're going to stick with them. Okay, so for this part, we always like to have the enemies come closer to us. So we're just going to have everyone sit in the back. Have Natsu right there. We got the mobility on him, neat, but unfortunate the attack debuff. So we're just going to have Sissy White help us with that. But first, we're going to have Lucy summon Ares. You can use Loki, but I think Ares here is going to be a bit better since we can attack everyone and hopefully get rid of multiple of them at the same time. And then Sissy White, you move all the way back here and then just dispel the attack debuff on everyone. Okay, Lucy does Aquarius. Now that part is sucked right there because you do have a 1-3 chance that she does summon like Loki and Ares, and that would have been your best bet right there. That would have been the best scenario to happen right there, so that you don't get hit. You would not have gone hit, even if she does summon Ares. Unfortunate that she did start off with a curse, so that means she got to reach further than normal. But I think I can do just fine, even with that happening. So you can use bounty, but you are going to be focusing on one target. So why do that when you can summon the infantry one, and this infantry does have attack command, so it helps out everyone. Actually, we are going to put the summon away here so that everyone benefits from it. Let's have Mew just AoE, since that's all she can really do here. And we are seeing some magic defense down on them, which is quite neat for Lucy to follow up. So her 1C is going to do a bigger number here. So attack everyone. Hopefully this gets rid of at least Natsu. At least get rid of one of them. No, really? Okay. Thought that would be enough to get rid of everyone. Yeah, literally everyone is almost gone. But with Wolf Bomb here, it should take them out. Even if it applies it to the rest of the team. So even though we might not be able to get rid of anyone here, hopefully the fixed damage does that. And so with Natsu, I'm gonna make sure that happens. So I'm gonna have him attack Sissy White so that she doesn't provide any healing for them. So Natsu, go ahead and do this. And then next turn we are gonna get attacked. So yeah, we are gonna get attacked here, but the fixed damage should take them out. Go ahead, do it. There we go. There we go. Alright, so yeah, I was hoping the AoE would, all of the AoE action got rid of them, but the fixed damage was more of a satisfying ending. So yeah, I think that's like the best that you're able to do with all of that, but that's probably going to be like the best case scenario in order to get rid of them all at once and just providing a great deal of pressure on them. Just make sure that Natsu does get rid of Sissy White if you are able to do that. I don't know if Sissy White was able to move first right there, but I would just do it just in case. So yeah, now that we got that one out of the way, now let's go ahead and get right on into his showcase. Alright, so now that we're in the second half of things, what you need to know about Natsu is that he's a damage ramping DPS who is best used in kind of a more drawn out fight where there's plenty of enemies. That really shows by looking at his talents. His attack and defense are boosted. The real kicker to this, he gets these stacks of flame by starting the battle or when an ally is forced into it. It increases the damage by 5% that lasts 6 turns and stacks 6 times, so it caps out at 30%. When having at least 3 more stacks of it, then he heals 30% of damage dealt. So it's pretty simple. You'll get it without even realizing it, so it can stack pretty fast, most of the time, depending on the situation. And once you have a certain amount of flame, then he can heal whenever he attacks. And I'm sure you can tell, it's going to be one of his main mechanics, so his skills will have a connection to it. Like his 1C. If the enemy is eliminated, then the cooldown is reduced by 1. And if he has 3 stacks of flame, then the enemy cannot counterattack in battle. Really straightforward here, it is going to be one of his most consistent skill, even if you have to kill for it. Which will be something very common by looking at his 2C. This thing is also his other main mechanic. It automatically gives him 3 stacks of flame and enters end mode. That increases his damage even more and becomes a demon unit for 3 turns. When attacking and eliminating an enemy, if he has at least 5 stacks of flame, then he can act again. That has a 2-turn cooldown. While in it, for each enemy eliminated or when an ally dies, then the duration is increased. For each additional turn of end mode, he can dispel buff before battle up to 3 times. When it disappears, he gets an exhaustion state that lowers his mobility for 1 turn. After using the skill, he's able to act again 2 blocks. So by using it, he becomes a different unit. You're going to be using him quite differently. So he becomes a demon unit and will have a total of 50% damage increase. I do recommend having 2 stacks of flame before using this so that you get 5 stacks automatically that his act again can trigger. The reason being is that it can run out very quickly if you are not using it right. What this also means is that he will lose his buffs very quickly since it doesn't keep it, only when he first uses the 2C. So the way to maximize full usage is to make sure he kills things. Make sure to do that. Only he has to kill things to extend the duration. The other method being that an ally dies. But 100% of the time, you never want that option, unless they are able to summon things. Again, a reminder, make sure he kills things. It is one of two of the only way. And if you have a summon, it'd be wise to purposely have them get killed to make sure he maintains that form. The last thing I want to show off that may be confusing for people is the buff that shows the extra turn here. It kind of shows you that he can act again for this amount of times, but that's not what it really says. It shows that he was able to act again this amount of time while being in end mode. And what this directly connects to is the amount of buffs he's able to dispel on the enemy. So that's what it means. And since we're in end mode, let's finally talk about the Thxs. The passive, when on his fire terrain, he takes less damage and skill range increases by 1. It's a single target skill. By having 4 stacks of flame, he attacks first. Using this in end mode applies his fire terrain within 2 blocks of the target for 2 turns. It does fixed damage and they will take more damage from Natsu that stacks twice for 2 turns. Alright, so before we do anything else, I'll go ahead and show you guys how it all looks like. Alright, so afterwards, since he's in end mode right now, that means the fire terrain will spread, so do fixed damage to enemies and apply the debuff so that Natsu can hurt them even more. Of course, the main thing that we're really going to see here is the extra skill range. As long as he's on it, the passive will take effect, so like I said, more skill range and he's able to take less damage in it. And sadly, this is the only way to apply the terrain. And just be sure to be in end mode before doing so. It's kind of why you want clock on him and the edge of memories, so that he's able to use the skill really often. Because it is kind of difficult to make full use of it. So the more that he can spread this, even better. So when it comes to using Natsu, you want to put him in situations in those longer fights and where there's enough enemies. So that way, he maintains his flame stacks even though they last long, and especially the end mode. Me myself personally, I like to wait until I get 2 stacks before transforming so that we can immediately act again. But once I'm able to approach with them, I'm gonna go crazy with Natsu. But I'm not gonna direct my attack at the boss. So let's say that Vargas here is the boss. If there's other mobs around, I want to make sure to have Natsu take care of them first, because we want that end mode to last even longer. And once we're able to go long enough, by the time it runs out, it'll come right back online, so that way he's able to use it again immediately. Like I said before, he does lose it quite fast. So if you have a summon, it is really beneficial because I'm pretty sure it'll make it like last just like at least 1 turn longer when he's idle. If you're able to maximize it, I'm pretty sure it just lasts long enough to where the skill becomes fully refreshed. And let's say like all the mobs are gone, then just go ahead and attack the boss as free as you like. If you have the 3C, I would use that first, so that way it applies the terrain, so that means more damage boost. And then just go all in. And if the boss ends up summoning more enemies, then as always, have Natsu go at them before you go ahead and attack the boss again. So yeah, that's the way how I would see myself using Natsu. Nothing too overcomplicated, just that he's sort of going to be a high maintenance character to use. So, overall, for a free character, Natsu is pretty solid. His damage is really crazy, of course not on the same level as Kasumi from Dead or Alive, but it's up there. Getting those flame stacks is really easy in most scenarios, so stuff like his self-healing at the end and stuff are easy to meet the conditions. And those are some quick positives that I can say about him. But his negatives, I have more to say. For one, his end mode. You do easily use it if you aren't using it right. So you really are forced to do the things that requires you to make it last longer. Him attacking other enemies who are easily killable, you want to do that. And even with that, his buffs also go down very quickly. So that's another issue with that. And doing this method is sometimes barely enough to have it back up again. So if you have summons along, it will be a bit longer. And hey, maybe if you use it right, then possibly he can have it permanently. I haven't really tested it myself, I'm just saying stuff here. It's a negative that is passable, I feel like. Really only have a slight problem with this 3C. And that is mainly when it comes to applying his fire terrain. Maybe some of you guys seen this coming. It is the only way to apply it, given it's a single target skill. If he had another skill, like maybe an AoE perhaps, I wish that one also applied his fire terrain while in end mode. Having only his 3C being the case sucks, especially when it's a single target skill. Not only that, he can't fully utilize it since he's always going to run around. He's always going to look for kills. So that way his end mode lasts longer, because that extra damage is way too good to pass up. If you're not in end mode, then it is like a 10% more damage boost without it, but in it, you do have a grand total of 80% damage increase with everything in place. So if you're not in end mode, then you can easily focus on the boss. And of course, in end mode, you want to be looking for kills. And if you can't look for that, then yeah, you're able to do a lot more damage than normal. But if you can't find ways to kill things, then he just loses a 20% damage increase. So even with that loss, it's not a big deal because he's still going to be hitting quite hard. So that's why I kind of say like he becomes like a different character, because in his base form, you can just do whatever you want, right? But in end mode, you're going to be looking to do a specific thing. So yeah, with all that said, it makes him a pretty solid character to use while being kinda high maintenance. At least when he's transformed, right? So it does make him kinda annoying to use. Alright, so that was Natsu's showcase. For a free character, he is amazing to use, albeit high maintenance. He'll be a solid DPS to use, especially since you can get him to 5 stars by farming the events, and you can use him for a long time until I would say you get someone better. Hey, if you like him that much, then you can stick with him. Just that once he transforms, you kind of have to use him a bit differently. Would I find myself using him from time to time? I would honestly say yeah, but since I have a lot of characters, me myself personally, I just have more options that are better. But hey, if I just want to use Natsu for the fun of it, then he is someone that I may consider using. That's how good he is for a solid character. But that's all I got to say. If you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see more, feel free to like and subscribe. While you're at it, feel free to let me know down in the comments how you guys feel about Natsu, or if there was anything else that I may have missed. With all that said, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day and take care. So yeah, thanks for watching. Your fellow Z.